When I stood in the hallway of the home Margaret and I shared for 35 years, I had exactly 14 days before the new owners took possession. My two sons, David in Seattle and Michael in Boston, couldn't get time off work until the final weekend. That meant I had 10 days completely alone with 35 years of accumulated life and absolutely no idea where to start. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 68 years old, and 3 years ago, Margaret, my wife of 41 years, lost her battle with cancer. When she passed, I did what a lot of people do after losing someone. I froze. I left everything exactly as she'd arranged it. Her reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. Her favorite cardigan still hung on the back of the kitchen chair. Our home became a museum, and I became its lonely curator. For 3 years, I couldn't touch a thing. Every drawer I opened felt like disturbing sacred ground. Every closet was a landmine of grief waiting to go off. So when I finally sold the house, forced by rising taxes and a body that couldn't maintain a 4-bedroom colonial anymore, I faced the most overwhelming task of my life. But here's what shocked me. I didn't just survive those 10 days. Something broke open inside me. I discovered 7 ruthless tricks that completely changed how I see possessions, memory, and what it truly means to move forward after loss. These aren't the gentle take your time tips you hear everywhere. Some of them felt almost cruel at first, but they work specifically for seniors dealing with limited energy, decades of accumulation, and emotional attachments that feel impossible to break. I need to be honest before we start. I almost quit. On day 3, I found Margaret's blue dress, the one she wore to our 30th anniversary dinner. I sat on the bedroom floor, holding it against my chest, and cried for a solid hour. I picked up the phone to call the realtor and cancel the entire sale. My hand was shaking. I dialed 6 of the 7 digits before I stopped myself. That moment of crisis led to one of the most important breakthroughs in my entire process. I'll tell you exactly what happened when we get to trick number 6. By the end of this video, you'll have the exact system I used. No fluff, no gentle hand-holding, just the raw truth about what works when you're staring down a mountain of memories with a deadline breathing down your neck. Have you ever felt completely paralyzed by the thought of decluttering your home? Drop a comment and tell me what's holding you back. I read every single one, and I promise you're not alone. Trick number 1, the triage method. This saved me from the analysis paralysis that had kept me frozen for 3 solid years, and I borrowed it from an unlikely source: emergency medicine. In an emergency room, doctors don't give every patient the same attention. They triage. Critical patients get immediate care. Stable patients wait. It sounds harsh, but it saves lives. I applied the same merciless logic to my possessions. I walked into each room and divided everything into 3 categories in exactly 15 minutes. No more. Category 1, can't function without it. Medications, legal documents, daily essentials. My blood pressure pills, the deed to the property, my one good pair of reading glasses. Category 2, might need it someday. This is where most people get permanently stuck. Category 3, haven't used it or thought about it in over a year. Automatic elimination. No debate, no exceptions. Here's the ruthless part. Category 2 gets treated exactly like Category 3. Might need it someday is just fear wearing a practical disguise. And fear will keep you buried in clutter until they carry you out. I started in the kitchen because necessity is obvious there. In 15 minutes, the triage was devastating. I found 19 coffee mugs when I only drink from 1. 4 complete sets of dishes for a man who eats alone at the counter. A drawer with 31 takeaway menus from restaurants, 3 of which had closed years ago. And enough gadgets to outfit a cooking show, including a pasta maker I'd used exactly once in 2009. Keep my 1 mug, 1 set of dishes, 2 pots, 2 pans, basic utensils. Everything else into donation boxes. I expected to feel loss. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Margaret's diagnosis. Relief. Pure physical relief. Like someone had loosened a belt I didn't know was squeezing me. Each room I triaged gave me more confidence to be even more ruthless with the next. What's your biggest might need it someday category? Kitchen gadgets? Clothes from decades ago? Tell me in the comments, because naming your weakness is the first step to breaking free from it. Trick number 2, the 10-minute sprint. This single rule is why I didn't collapse from exhaustion and quit like every previous attempt. Here's what I learned the hard way. At 68, I have roughly 10 minutes of solid emotional decision-making energy before mental fatigue takes over. After that threshold, I start keeping everything because deciding feels more exhausting than just closing the drawer and walking away. So I set a timer for exactly 10 minutes. Not per room, per small area. One shelf, one drawer, one section of closet. When the timer went off, I stopped, even if I was mid-drawer, even if I was on a roll, especially if I was on a roll. Because that's when you make sloppy emotional decisions you'll regret. Day 1, bedroom dresser, top drawer. I found expired medications from 2016. A broken watch I'd meant to fix for 4 years. 14 dead pens. Birthday cards from people I couldn't remember. And instruction manuals for a television we'd donated in 2019. One full trash bag in 10 minutes. The genius was in the stopping. By quitting each session while I still had energy, I actually looked forward to the next sprint instead of dreading it. Between sessions, I made coffee, stepped onto the porch, listened to the radio. Normal life. This kept me refreshed and prevented the decision fatigue that makes people give up and keep everything, just to end the agony of choosing. By the end of day 1, I had completed 22 separate sprints. Nearly 4 hours of focused decluttering without once feeling overwhelmed. I was tired in a good way, the way you feel after honest work, not the crushing fatigue of an emotional meltdown. Do you try to tackle entire rooms at once and burn out within an hour? Tell me in the comments how that's been working, because I spent 3 years failing with that exact approach. Trick number 3, the stranger test. This one sounds cold, but it was genuinely liberating. I started looking at every possession as if a complete stranger would be sorting through my belongings after I was gone. Not morbid, practical. One question about every item. Would a stranger understand why I kept this, or would they think I'd lost my mind? This shift completely diffused the emotional charge that had been paralyzing me. When you imagine someone else evaluating your things, you see them with brutal clarity, instead of through the fog of sentiment and guilt. Those 23 issues of Woodworking magazine from 2004? A stranger would recycle them without blinking. 7 identical screwdrivers in 3 different junk drawers? Clearly excessive. A drawer full of plastic bags stuffed inside other plastic bags. Embarrassing through outside eyes. Margaret's book collection was where it got hard. She had 2 full shelves of romance novels she'd loved. My gut screamed, keep them all. But would a stranger understand why a 68-year-old widower was storing 40 romance novels he'd never read? The answer was obvious, even though it stung. I donated them to the library's book sale. Somewhere, other women are enjoying stories Margaret loved. The photo albums were the biggest test. We had 18 albums stuffed with blurry vacation photos, duplicates, and pictures of people neither of us could identify anymore. I condensed 18 albums into 4 that actually told our story. The meaningful photos, the ones that make you laugh or cry, stayed. The rest I released. What item in your home would make no sense to a stranger? Be honest in the comments. We've all got something. Trick number 4, the $20 replacement rule. This demolished the single biggest excuse I used for keeping things. What if I need it someday? For every item I hesitated on, I asked 3 questions. Could I realistically get another one? What would it cost to replace? How many times in the last 5 years had I actually needed this specific thing? The answers were humiliating. 8 screwdrivers scattered across various drawers. Replacement cost for one good one, $6. Times I'd needed more than one in 5 years, 0. Kept one, donated the rest. Margaret's craft supplies filled 3 large boxes. Yarn for projects she never started. Fabric from sewing she'd stopped enjoying. If I ever wanted to take up knitting, which was never going to happen, new supplies would cost less than dinner out and would actually be usable, unlike dried-up paints and tangled yarn from 2008. The revelation hit hardest with my tools. A garage full of specialty equipment for home repairs I'd been hiring professionals to handle for 6 years. My back and knees made that decision long ago, but my garage hadn't gotten the message. I donated the tools to a young couple down the street who just bought their first house. The look on that kid's face when he saw my table saw was worth more than any amount of just-in-case security. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Holding on to things just in case costs you more than replacing them ever would. You're paying in storage space, mental clutter, cleaning time, and daily low-grade anxiety, all to avoid a hypothetical purchase that will probably never happen. What are you holding on to that you could replace for pocket change? Drop it in the comments. Let's do some honest math together. Trick number 5, the photograph trick. This saved me from the impossible choice between keeping everything sentimental and losing memories forever. That's the false choice most of us believe we're facing, and it's a lie. Before letting go of any meaningful item, I photographed it. Not a quick snapshot. A proper, well-lit photo that captured the details. Then I created digital albums organized by category. Margaret's things, the boys' childhood, our adventures, family holidays. The psychological effect was profound. The moment I had a photograph, my brain relaxed its grip on the physical object. The memory was preserved. The evidence existed. I could let go. My son's childhood artwork was the first test. 2 boxes of drawings, school projects, and little clay figures. Keeping all of it in a smaller apartment was impossible. Throwing it away felt like erasing their childhoods. I spent one afternoon photographing every single piece and created a digital album for each son. David called me that night. "Dad, I didn't even know these existed. This is incredible." He'd never have dug through physical boxes in my basement, but a digital album on his phone? He showed his own kids their father's kindergarten drawings that same evening. I hit a wall with this trick too. When I photographed Margaret's jewelry box, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Some items cut deeper than others. I gave myself permission to take a break, cry if I needed to, and come back when ready. Not every sprint has to be painless. I kept 3 pieces of her jewelry, her wedding ring, her mother's brooch, and the necklace I gave her on our 25th anniversary, then photographed and donated everything else. Do you have boxes of memories taking up space that could live in a digital album? Tell me in the comments what you'd photograph first. Trick number 6, the future self test. This is the trick that saved me on day 3 when I was sitting on the bedroom floor clutching Margaret's blue dress, ready to cancel everything. Through my tears, I asked myself one question that changed the entire trajectory of those 10 days. Does keeping this dress serve the man I'm becoming, or is it anchoring me to a life that's already complete? I sat with that question for a long time, and the honest answer broke me open in the best way. Margaret wouldn't have wanted me to build a shrine. She told me exactly that in the hospital. "Don't you dare turn that house into a tomb, Arthur." Her exact words. I'd been ignoring them for 3 years. The future self-test asks one thing about every item. Does this belong in my next chapter or my last one? My engineering manuals from a 30-year career. Impressive on a shelf, but my future self wasn't going back to work. He was learning watercolor painting and volunteering at the Veterans Center. Those manuals were anchoring me to a professional identity that was already beautifully complete. Margaret's cookbook collection. My future self wasn't hosting dinner parties for 12. He was learning to cook simple meals for one, maybe someday for two. I kept her 3 favorite cookbooks, the ones with her handwriting in the margins, and let go of the rest. The formal dining table that seated 8 was the hardest practical decision. My future self needed a small table for 2, with room for coffee and the morning paper, and maybe, eventually, room for someone sitting across from him. This test gives you permission to evolve. You're not betraying your past by making room for your future. You're honoring the wisdom that comes with 68 years of living. Who is your future self? What does that person need? Share your vision in the comments, because sometimes saying it out loud makes it real. Trick number 7, the farewell ritual. This final trick prevented regret from poisoning everything I'd accomplished. Instead of sneaking things into garbage bags like I was doing something shameful, I started saying proper goodbyes. This isn't sentimental fluff. It's psychological necessity. Without closure, you will second-guess yourself at 3 a.m. and start pulling things out of donation boxes. I know because I did exactly that on day 2 before I figured this out. The ritual was simple. For meaningful items, I held them, said one specific thing I was grateful for, then released them with intention instead of guilt. Margaret's teaching supplies. I held her worn grade book and said, "Thank you for 28 years of shaping young minds." Then I donated everything to a first-year teacher at her old school who was buying materials with her own money. My father's toolbox. "Thank you for teaching me to build things with my hands." Then I gave it to my neighbor Tom's teenage son who just started woodworking class. Margaret's blue dress, the one that almost ended everything on day 3. I held it one last time and said, "Thank you for the most beautiful night of my life." Then I let it go, knowing the memory of that evening lives in me, not in fabric and thread. The most surprising farewells were for broken things. I thank my old recliner for thousands of hours of comfort. Thank Margaret's garden tools for the flowers that made our neighbors stop and stare. These small moments of gratitude transformed guilt into peace. Have you struggled with guilt when letting go of sentimental items? Tell me in the comments what farewell might help you release things with gratitude instead of shame. The day my sons arrived for the final weekend, they barely recognized the house. David walked through the rooms with tears in his eyes. Not sadness, something closer to relief. "Dad," he said, "I've been worried about you for 3 years. I'm not worried anymore." Michael, my quieter son, handed me a small framed photo he'd printed from the digital album I'd sent. Margaret and me at the kitchen table, laughing about something neither of us could remember. "For your new place," he said. My neighbor Tom helped with the heavy furniture. The local veterans organization sent 2 young men with a truck for donations. I didn't do this alone, and asking for help with the physical work wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. When I locked the front door for the last time, I stood on the porch for a few minutes. 35 years, 2 sons raised, 1 great love, 1,000 Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, and Margaret humming in the kitchen. Then I got in my car and drove to my new apartment. That was 7 months ago. My 2-bedroom place has everything I need and nothing I don't. I teach a beginner's woodworking class at the community center. I volunteer at the Veterans Center on Tuesdays. I cook simple meals from Margaret's favorite cookbook, the one with her notes in the margins. And last month I had coffee with a woman named Claire from my watercolor class. Just coffee. But I sat across from her at my small table for 2, and for the first time in years, the empty chair didn't feel like a wound. It felt like an invitation. These 7 tricks didn't just help me clear out a house. They taught me that decluttering isn't about losing your past. It's about building a door to whatever comes next, and finding the courage to walk through it. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A parent, a friend, or maybe yourself 6 months from now. Subscribe if you want more honest conversations about navigating this chapter of life. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 68 years old, and my next chapter is just getting started.